the work that I do, I try to interpret the cultural images and icons, and it always relates back to stories and mythologies. My name is Preston Singletary. I'm a Tlingit tribal member that lives in Seattle. I'm here in Oklahoma for the opening of the Raven in the Box of Daylight, an exhibition that I put together. It was about 2004, I met a man named Walter Porter, who was a Tlingit elder, but he was also kind of a mythologist, the way he described himself. So he had taken a lot of the Tlingit stories and analyzed them, sort of broke them down into the archetypes of, mythology in a Joseph Campbell kind of way. And he shared those with me, and I spent a period of time working with him, traveling and giving presentations. We had endeavored to work on this exhibition together, but then he passed away in mid-2010s. And so I was sort of left to figure out, sort of sweep up the bits and knowledge that he had given me, and then I found another curator. It was very clear to me who I should work with, and I went with Miranda Belardi-Lewis, who is also Tlingit.
Hi, my name is Miranda Belardi-Lewis. I'm Zuni and Tlingit. I'm an assistant professor of Native North American Indigenous Knowledge at the University of Washington's Information School. I also have the privilege of being the guest curator for Preston Singletary Raven in the Box of Daylight. The short version of this exhibition is that this is a Tlingit story. It is one of our most treasured, iconic stories, and it is featuring Raven, who is a trickster figure. Raven, in this story, was looking for the daylight, which was being hoarded by a noble, wealthy man. Raven decided that he was going to release the light into the world. And so as you're walking through the exhibition, you are traveling alongside Raven as he is trying to first get into the house, into the clan house where the light is being held, as he transforms into a human boy, and then as he releases the stars, the moon, and the sun.
Well, there's a lot of aspects of the story that, you can really only get through reading the catalog. The things that Walter shared with me about the stories were, the symbolism of, the world's in darkness, Raven brings the light, so he would use a lot of theology, and mythology, comparative mythology, to sort of illustrate his point. And in the end, it sort of becomes like a universal experience that humankind really arrived at the same place from many different angles. And so that's how I've come to see the story. There's aspects of forgiveness, there's this whole adventure that happens throughout the story, and eventually when daylight is brought to the world, then the people scatter off into different realms, and they become off into the forest or into the water, or they jump into the sky and they become the animals of that region. And then the people who stood up and looked around, and finally saw the world in daylight, in the light, then they became the human beings.
Preston and I had these 5 different tellings. There's many more stories, many more versions of Raven in the Box of Daylight. And it is not just a Tlingit story, but it's our story. It's one of our foundational stories that helps explain the world.
Raven was walking along the beach, and it was the beginning of time. The world was dark. The stars, the moon, and sun were kept in boxes by a wealthy old man. He lived at the headwaters of the Nass River. The fisherman of the night told Raven of these treasures, and so Raven went to the house of this old man. Raven went to the house of Nashak Ankawu. And it was there that Raven saw Nashak Ankawu's beautiful daughter drinking water from the stream. So Raven had an idea. Raven changed his spirit into a tiny hemlock needle. And when that beautiful daughter dipped her ladle into the stream, Raven floated down and fell in her cup. And when she drank that water, she also swallowed Raven. And soon she became pregnant and gave birth to Raven in the form of a human child. Now everyone loved this child, everyone except the mother-in-law. You see, it was really the mother-in-law. She knew that this child was the spirit of Raven, but nobody listened to her. Nobody listened to that mother-in-law. And still to this day, you'll still find that nobody listens to the mother-in-law. So Raven, that child with the spirit of Raven was going to get the stars, moon, and sun for all the people of the world. That child pointed to the corner of the house, the box containing the stars, and he began to cry. And no, but he gave in to him. He took that box down and placed it in front of his grandchild. He says, "You don't open that box." And that child looked up at him with his big eyes and went, "Oh." So he played on that box. He sat on the box and he danced on that box. And when nobody was looking, that child opened the box, and out of the box flew the stars into the nighttime sky forever. My precious objects are God forever. But he couldn't be upset. He loved his grandchild. That child with the spirit of Raven pointed to the other corner of the house, the box that contained the moon, and he began to cry. No, you can't have that box. But he loved his grandchild, and he gave in to him. He took the box down containing the moon, and he placed it in front of his grandchild. He says, "You don't open this box." And that child looked up at him and went, "Oh." So he played on that box. He sat on the box and he danced on that box. And when he opened that box, he took that moon. He took that moon, he tossed it up. He tossed it up, and he tossed it up like a ball, and he tossed it up, and it went out the smoke hole into the nighttime sky forever. My precious objects are God forever. But he loved his grandchild. He loved his grandchild. Raven is patient. He's very patient. Raven pointed to the other corner of the house, the box containing the sun, and he began to cry. And no, you can't have that box. No. And he kept crying and crying and crying. And he cried so much that he got sick. And he got so sick that the people thought that he might die. And with the beautiful daughter, she picked up her child and said, "Father, is there anything worth more than the life of your grandchild?" "Oh, my dear, So he took the box containing the sun and he placed it in front of his grandchild. And that child played on that box. He sat on the box. He ate on the box, and he slept on that box. And when nobody was looking, that child opened that box, and out of the box flew the sun into the nighttime sky forever. My precious objects of God forever. Yes, But when nobody was looking, that child with the spirit of Raven changed his spirit back into a bird again. And he took the last box, the one that is called the box of daylight, and he started to fly out that smoke hole with him. As he was flying out that smoke hole, he yelled out, "Spirit of the smoke hole, grab Raven, grab him, hold him there." And Raven was struggling, trying to get out that smoke hole. You see, Raven was white. He was originally white, but as he was stuck in that smoke hole, the soot started to cover Raven's feathers, and he became black. And now Shaka says, "Release him, my smoke hole spirit, release him." And Raven flew into the nighttime sky, looking like a little hunk of coal. Now Raven was walking along the beach, and he had the box of daylight with him. And he came up to the fishermen of the night, and they had a fire, and Raven says, "Give me your food." And they said, "No, go away." And Raven says, "I freed the stars, moon, and sun. I'm the most precious gift in here for everyone. Now give me your food." And the fishermen of the night, they said, "Go away, you're Raven. Hey, get out of here, go." And this made Raven upset. So Raven, he opened that box of daylight, and daylight flashed throughout the world. Those fishermen of the night, they ran away and hid. They were scared. Some hid in the sky. Some hid in the forest. Some hid in the waters. The ones who hid in the sky became all the birds of the world. The ones who hid in the forest became all the animals of the world. The ones who hid in the waters became all the fishes, the creatures of the waters. And then there are those, the ones who stood up straight and tall. They stood up straight and tall. And they saw their world clearly for the first time. And they marveled at the beauty of it. And this is how a raven brought daylight to the world. Ooh.
As we were looking at these different versions, and we are limited by our inability to speak and read Tlingit, the Tlingit language. So we relied heavily on people who are devoting their energy and their passion to perpetuating the Tlingit language. And so they helped us with stories, with the words, and with the details. And so as we're reading these different stories, listening to these different stories, and they're all have the same basic elements. The world in darkness, Raven transforms into a boy, releases the light, and then transforms back into a raven, the blackbird we know today. Even though that structure is there, in all of the stories, the details are different depending on if somebody lives on the coast, the storyteller lives on the coast, or if the storyteller lives in the mountains. It also depends on the gender of the storyteller. So some details are reveal more intimate knowledge of being female. Some are more intimate knowledge of being male. These are aspects of balance within Tlingit culture where we're looking at coastal Tlingits, inland Tlingits, male, female, raven, eagle. And so the entire premise of Tlingit society is based on this idea of reciprocity and balance. What do we give and what do we receive? And how can we keep that in an equilibrium that preserves balance for everyone?
It was a period of about 3 years really that I worked on this body of work. And as I always kind of joke about it, I did it in my spare time. In my regular studio practice, I have 4 employees, and so it's kind of a big machine to kind of keep going.
And so while Preston can create every piece from start to finish by himself, that's no longer how he creates his glass pieces. And so there's multiple people that work in his studio that help with the hot sculpting of the sculptures. There's people that help carve out the designs, and there's people who help sandblast the designs.
Some of the biggest challenges I had were to incorporate the video, which really became kind of a partnership with Juniper Shui. And he helped me design the exhibition, and every venue that it goes to, we kind of get together and figure out how is the video going to play out, in the context of the space, and is there enough distance from the projectors and all that stuff. So I really wanted to create this immersive experience and have it be multisensory, and with the sound included with the video, kind of give somebody the idea that they're in a different place. When I got to work with Juniper, we're trying to figure out how to illustrate the idea of transformation, or animate these pieces in such a way that it would kind of give you the feeling that something's happening, something kind of mystical is happening in this piece. After several years of working with this and gaining notoriety for what I do with this material of glass, it's become kind of a path for me. Once I placed myself on that path, it opened so many opportunities, meeting people and traveling and working with different people. And it just enriched my life in such a way that once you become a keeper of cultural knowledge, it becomes a bit of a responsibility. And that's kind of how I take it. And it comes from, different kind of spiritual practices that I'm involved with, and that gives me a sense of purpose for the things that I'm doing today. So welcome to the exhibition. This is Raven in the Box of Daylight. This is this story, and it starts as Raven is a white bird, and this is in the beginning of time, and the world is in darkness. Here we are in this kind of perpetual rainfall of the Alaskan wilderness. And so I created this raven as sort of point markers throughout the exhibition. So here we're going to continue following raven into this space where Raven is, in the story, he goes to the fisherman of the night and he asks, where's the daylight? And so this is how I illustrated the fishermen in their canoe, and this is the Naas River. So I created this river of glass. Glass making for me is really, it's the material that I know best. And I felt like when I started in this factory that it was getting in on some ground level, this basic training and making simple objects. I got really comfortable with working with glass. And so when I started to connect it to my culture, people responded really positively. And I think that they realized that there's something more personal going on, that I was trying to, dig deep and try to find a way of conveying this experience that I was, developing. That's why I stick with the material of glass. And, I've become known for indigenous Tlingit glass artists. So that's something that is a pretty unique experience. It would be hard to sort of duplicate the education that I got, being trained by working with other artists. The fishermen tell Raven of this old man that has the daylight in his clan house. And so if we come around the corner here, this is Naas Shakan Kawu. This is the man who lived in the clan house at the Naas River. And this is his daughter. So his whole family lives in this clan house, and Raven is told that the daughter comes out to drink water from a natural spring outside of the clan house. So all the way over here, the idea is that Raven has power of transformation. He can assume different forms, and so he first changes himself into a speck of dirt and floats down this natural spring, and the daughter scoops up the water with this ladle. But because she's of noble family, her attendants took a feather and they drew it through the water, and they discovered that there was dirt in the water, so they toss it out. So Raven has to reformulate his plan, and the next day he turns into a hemlock needle, transforms himself into a hemlock needle. And so that piece that's up in the rafters over there is the idea of Raven is deconstructing, and he turns into the hemlock needle, floats down the natural spring. She scoops it up, and this time she doesn't see it, so she swallows the water and also the hemlock needle. The Raven's now inside of her, and she becomes pregnant. So he's transformed himself now into a human child. And so this figure represents Raven growing inside of the woman's belly, and so it's kind of a humanoid Raven human figure here. So when the woman goes to give birth, she's having a difficult time giving birth, and so a medicine woman comes and says, so in the old days they would dig a small pit and they would line this area with furs, and then the child would be born onto these furs. And the medicine woman instructs the people of the clan house to replace the furs with goat's beard moss. And so once they put the moss inside of that little pit, she gives birth to Raven. And so Raven is born into the world as a human child. So this piece represents this sort of transformation, kind of animated with the video. But here Raven is changing, and he's turning into a human child. And so because now he's a member of the family, he is allowed inside the clan house. And so as you walk through here, this is the idea of the clan house, and now he's allowed into it. And here we have the old man and the old man's wife. Just kind of bring some the idea of human presence into the show.
The regalia that they're wearing was designed and made by Dorothy Grant. Dorothy Grant is a Haida fashion designer.
Now that this child is in the clan house, he's free to move about, and he's looking at all these objects. These are objects that represent a person of high status. And so this is supposed to represent the clan house. This is kind of the stair steps down to the central fire pit, would be the idea of the shelves as what they represent. And so as you pass through here, so I'll start here by saying the first box that the raven finds is this box that contains the stars. It's the one that in the foreground here. And so he's playing with these boxes and opens it up, finds the stars, and he tosses them through the smoke hole in the center of the clan house above the fire pit. And the stars, they take their place in the sky. And so the old man is, disappointed with him because he lost these treasures. They're lost and gone forever. And but a couple of days later, he discovers this next box, and it's the box that contains the moon. And so Raven's playing with this box, and he's sleeping on it and eating off it. And when nobody's looking, he opens up the box and he takes the moon and he tosses it through the smoke hole, and it takes its place in the sky as well. So this time the old man's really, really angry and disappointed with his grandson, and he punishes him and reprimands him. So, when Raven was pointing at this third box, the box that contains the sun, the old man refuses to give it to him. And so he, Raven at that point was tired of being in human form. So he opens up this box and he takes the sun, and the old man realizes immediately that he's been fooled. And so he instructs the men of the clan house to, capture the raven. So they grab onto the raven's tail and, they put him over the smoke hole as or the fire pit as he's, trying to escape. And they throw pitch onto the fire, and the soot from the pitch turns Raven black. And so Raven eventually manages to get away, and he flies up through the smoke hole, and he brings with him the sun. And so here's a piece up here that kind of represents that action.
Because the stories that we're drawing from, while they are ancient, they were recorded in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where colonialism had taken a firm grip, and the role of the church. So patriarchy is coming in, colonialism, the assimilation, and the pivot from balance to shifting to let's uphold the man. And so while we are a matrilineal society, we get our clans and our bloodline from our mothers, we are a patriarchal community. And so the men are the leaders, even though the women are where we get our family lines from. And so how much of that has been influenced to a large amount through colonialism, we don't exactly know. And maybe the missing voice of Raven's mother and his grandmother are a side effect of that. And maybe there's stories where there was tellings of that, but if that's not interesting to an outsider who is themselves an older white man who is probably affluent because they have the means to travel to the Northwest Coast to record songs and stories, collect objects, those stories aren't usually the ones that we see recorded because they just didn't have a personal resonance with the collector.
Raven takes off into the sky, and he breaks daylight on the world, and people of the world had been living in darkness, and so it was really difficult for them to to understand what the world was around them. And so when they finally see this flash of light, some of them were scared and they scattered off into the different regions. Some of them ran off into the forest, and some of them jumped into the water, and some of them jumped into the sky, and they became the birds and the animals and the sea life of that region. And the people that stood up and kind of realized what the world was around them became the human beings. And so over time, these animal symbols have been adopted to represent certain families. So in this part of the exhibition, you have 4 different realms. You have, from the forest, the ocean, and then from the sky. So you have eagle and raven, you've got shark and killer whale, you've got bear and wolf, and then you have from the human realm, up the pieces up front here, these become the human beings, and there you have it.
As the curator and as a Tlingit person, I am very hopeful that visitors to Raven in the Box of Daylight understand and get an idea of the depth of storytelling within a tribal group. And we are presenting a very, very, very Tlingit-centric story. And there's a beauty in that. There's beauty in knowing about the 39 tribal nations in Oklahoma. There's also beauty in knowing specific stories from specific tribal groups. Our hope is that you experience the depth of values, of ethical messages, the universal messages that can be seen if we look at the specifics of one and think about it in relationship to ourselves.
Well, I hope that the visitors who see the exhibition would gain a new awareness of Tlingit culture, that they could maybe find some way of identifying with the story, that again, it's accessible to so many people, and you might have many different kinds of impressions of the exhibition, but I just hope it becomes something that people are inspired by and learn things from.